I wanted to take the time to create a video that is possibly a simpler explanation that is going to hopefully be more helpful to you understanding what to do for your animal narrative. So, for your animal narrative, I want you to revisit your research and think about how you can use your animal to identify with who you are personally, right? Or how you can use your animal as a communication device to tell a story. Think about what you wrote on your art journal page as far as why did you choose that animal, what symbolic meanings it has for you, or how your animal acts as a symbol for who you are as an individual person. So, what is a narrative? A narrative is a way of telling a story. When we were looking at this slide yesterday, you guys were able to think about what is this artwork about based on the details that you see. And then you were able to create a story in your head based on those details, or communicate what the story is based on those details. So there's the details of the Once Upon a Time that's written on the book. There's Humpty Dumpty. There's the rose from Belle. There's a phoenix. There's a tree that has a face on it. So the story is obviously, this painting is obviously about fairy tales and the books that this person is reading. So thinking about, as you're thinking about your animal, what kind of details are you going to need to help you tell that story? So what story do you want to tell in your artwork is what you're trying to come up with. What place, objects, or design elements are going to help you tell this story? What do you need what do you actually need other animals in the scene to also help you tell that story? Or what expression are you trying to give? What kind of emotion are you trying to create? So thinking about what do artists do to create imagery that has meaning? We're going to look at the artwork of Frida Kahlo. And looking at this artwork, what kind of details did she add in to create a meaning for this artwork, or to try to convey what she was thinking about to us as her viewer? So looking at the details, there are some important details here that help us think about this story. So I'm going to circle a few that we talked about. So remember that she is a Mexican artist. She has the Mexican flag in her hand. This was the time at which she had first come to the US. She included the US flag in the artwork behind her. She was in Detroit at the time, and this is her first time in the US. And Detroit was a big industrial city where there's lots of cars being made and lots of big city buildings, and she's seeing that for the first time. And Frida Kahlo was very much into traditional Mexican culture. So look at this dichotomy that she's creating here. What is she trying to say with her placement in the artwork? And what's the difference between how she feels about Mexico and how she feels about the US? So we'll be able to create that story based on the details that she's added into her painting. And that's a narrative. So what you need to do is think and plan an interesting composition that uses your animal. What do you want others to be able to read from your artwork? You may want to create some small sketches that are helping you think as you go through this process. So looking at Frida Kahlo's work again, what kind of story do you think that she may be trying to tell us by having her act as this deer with arrows that are going through the body of the deer? What do you think she's trying to say about her life and thinking about who she was as an individual? what is the narrative from this painting? That is what you need to do. You need to think of how you're going to use your animal to communicate a story to other people. We looked at artists that also create narratives using animals, other artists that create narratives with animals. Think about some personification techniques that you may use. You can add actual details that are from our human lives, but use these animals as the characters in the story. Or you can do kind of like Walton Ford did with the snake and the birds. If you want to have two animals that are creating meaning, that is fine too. If you want to play with two different symbols here and tell your story that way, that is a fine way to approach this as well. So your process as we go through this is to create a multimedia artwork that is at least 9 by 12. That's the size of your sketchbook. If you have larger paper available to you, you can use that as well. What you must do is use observation to draw the animal or the other details that you're creating within this story. This is not your opportunity to create a cartoon. You need to use at least 2 art media to complete the work. Based on the survey results, everyone has what they need at home to create the artwork. You may just need to think about how are you going to put the 2 art media together to complete your work. If you're using graphite, that means that you're going to render the values as a finished drawing, not just because you used a pencil first to create the drawing. So you can use watercolor as a background and then layer the graphite or colored pencil on top of the watercolor, and you've used your 2 art media. Thinking about the pieces that I showed you yesterday. So here within this piece that I showed you yesterday, and remember I showed you how I layered the materials together. So there's a watercolor background with ink that's in the background. These marks that are on top of the dog's face, they are actually, there's watercolor marks as well as marker pen marks as well, alcohol markers. On top of the watercolor that's in the background, those blue leaf looking shapes, that's acrylic paint. And then those white lines is a white gel pen. So whatever art media that you want to use will be fine. Just think about how you can layer them on top of each other. I did the same in this piece as well. This is mostly watercolor. But the teeth, I actually used whiteout to make them white again. And then again with the blue acrylic paint and the white gel pen up here on the top. And look at how it's layered over ink that's in the background. Those red and blue marks that are in the background, that's not watercolor, it's ink that I splashed down first. So you can layer as you're working. If you have alcohol markers and you want to work a little bit differently, that's fine too, but you still need to use 2 different art media. So collaging works on top of everything as well. All right, the last thing you need to do after you're done with your painting is to write your response questions. I want you to type these in on Teams. So you're going to describe your work and tell us what do we see when we look at your artwork. So that is telling us exactly what you have done. So what are the objects that are there? What animal do we see? What place is your animal in? So describe what your work looks like as if somebody was blind and they could not see your work. What story are you telling your viewer? So what is the narrative that you are trying to create? As you're writing what your narrative is, it should be matched up to the painting or the drawing that you have created. So do not create an artwork without thinking about the story and then try to make up something afterwards. You need to know what your story is first before you get started so that when you're writing, your writing matches your work and your work matches your writing. It's very easy to tell when something is just being made up. And then the last one is, how did you use the principles of design to express your narrative? All year we've been talking about the principles of design as we plan our artworks. So emphasis is where we've been spending a lot of time this semester. We have also talked about variety, making the contrast and have a lot of things to look at. Movement and rhythm. That's when your eyes going across the page are using direction. Pattern. Balance. That's asymmetrical, symmetrical, radial balance. And then the most important one is harmony, where does your work look like it all goes together? Does it look finished? So how did you use the principles of design? How did you use emphasis? How did you use variety? How is there movement, pattern, balance? How did you create harmony? At least choose two. I want you to turn in your work on Teams before the 13th of April. That's the Monday when we get back from spring break. If you have any questions or if you need anything before then, please email me at reido@Fulton Schools. I will be available to you all in case you need anything. I'm here. Or if you have questions, shoot me an email so that I can actually answer your questions and you're not creating your work without help. Okay, if you have any questions right now, you can also email me now, or you can rewatch this video as many times as you would like. Okay, all right, I hope this was helpful. Bye, everyone. Bye.